Welcome to the Scott Harness Podcast.
Well, it is great to have you with us today. We are going to continue our discussion about divorce. Man, what a tough topic that it is. But we've discovered a lot of stuff. If you haven't seen the first podcast for this, I would suggest you going back and watching it and to look at the content that we covered with that. You know, as always, I want to say this to you. We're constantly trying to produce content that has impact on your life, that's going to help you understand what God wants from you and how you can live better, and how it is that your life can really live in harmony with God. And so we're constantly producing that. You can help us get the content to you if you'll like and subscribe. We'll make sure that you get it there. You can ring, if you click the bell on YouTube, it'll get it there. On Facebook, if you'll share the video with friends, you're going to get people having an opportunity to see it as well. Today in the room, we have really some distinguished folks in here with me as we discuss.
Distinguished folk, Miss Karen. Miss Karen's distinguished.
As we discuss divorce, man, this is a big topic. So across the table from me is Karen Peeler, and Karen is a professional counselor here at that church.
That's right.
And she is on staff here,
bringing the heat.
And I don't know. I mean, how many? If you were just like a number,
spitballing,
how many people or how many folks do you think you've counseled since your time as a counselor?
Goodness, I don't know, a lot, maybe thousands. I don't know.
I bet it would be
if you consider how many come in during the week, but a lot.
And then on the phone and
staff.
And it didn't shut down during pandemic. We're still
not at all. We did Zoom and talked to people. I mean, in a lot of ways, phone,
that's huge.
Inbox, however they needed to reach out. We tried to be there to give them a next step.
Yeah, it's funny. As a pastor, you know, people ask, you know, what do you feel like that, you know, your calling is? I'm called to speak and preach and teach, but and lead a church. But one of the greatest things that we do as a church that I think probably has more impact than anything else is our counseling. And Karen leads all that. And it's got a bunch of moving parts. It's messy. Yeah. Lives are messy. People are messy. Stuff's messy. Sin's messy. The world we live in's messy. And but I can't. I run into people constantly that go, you know, I came in and Karen or Lynn or Mark or, you know, Jenny, Steve, they made a difference. You know, I was at a hopeless place and sitting down and talking with them and just navigating through it. I know for me personally, just being able to have that resource when I'm talking to people, go, hey, you need to go. This is not, I can't in 5 seconds flip a switch that's going to fix what's broken here. This took a little bit to get to, and it's going to take a little bit to get out of, but you need a navigator. You need somebody, and they'll do it for you. And the one thing that I always know is that I know they're going to hear the gospel.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
So
we give that spiritual guidance, open the word. It's all about teaching people what the Bible says about their life. You know, my husband is a licensed counselor, and I'm a minister ordained through the church to counsel.
Sure.
So those things together help so many people.
It's good.
And our counseling team is always ready to meet with people and help them navigate those difficult situations.
It's huge. It's absolutely huge. I think one of the biggest things that we face, you know, is sometimes just having somebody to listen to us and somebody that can give us good godly direction. Yeah. I talk to so many people that are out of state that they just don't have this available. And it's like impossible. Now they may have counselors, and it's on a secular side, and boy, you know, that's different. I mean, it's crazy how practical and applicable the Word of God is to every aspect and every element and every level of life. So that's good stuff. So Karen's with us. Kendall Harness is with us.
Yeah.
Pastor of our Cabot campus.
That church Cabot, baby.
Yeah.
Whoop. Yeah. And so I'm here just as comedic relief, I guess. No, I'm just kidding. I'm here to help.
Keep it real.
We're here to help you navigate divorce, and if you should or shouldn't get a divorce, which we sort of covered in the last one, I guess. And then in this one, we're talking more about prepping and walking through it. And so it's going to be really good. I'm excited. And good. We got B Rady G too.
That's right. Brady Gill. He's over there running all the, look at all the buttons and stuffings.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to have very much to say because we got professionals in here.
No.
But I'm the
that
dude
word
that's
is scary.
Professional. Yeah. So I'm doing all the technical stuff.
So we've had a few people ask, Brady, is that a noose behind you? But it's not. It's a light bulb, y'all.
Yeah,
it's a light bulb.
Yeah. Light bulb.
That's a light bulb.
I'll video y'all up a little bit.
Look at that. See, that's a light bulb hanging down. Not a noose. Not a noose.
Yeah.
No, that would be morbid, and we're not doing that.
Yeah, the very first time we had the mic, and it looked like this.
Yeah.
It was like right here, and it was like, it really did look like a noose. We were like, all right, we got to cut that out. We got to get that out of here.
People are like, what kind of things
We
are
have
y'all?
an idea. It's a light bulb.
What are y'all trying to say about this?
No, it's just that when a staff member doesn't perform well, hey, listen, it's a cutthroat society
He's
around here.
That's
man.
right.
Not.
You know, I'm just kidding.
All right, let's jump into this. We got a question. Here's the question. We got married for the wrong reasons. So this couple comes together. They probably left their spouses or whatever, living in sin. They got together and eventually got married. After we're married, what they're asking is, are we still committing adultery together? And let me read the verse to you that they're talking about. In Luke chapter 16 and verse 18, it says, anyone who divorces his wife and marries another woman commits adultery, and the man who marries a divorced woman commits adultery. So their question is are they continuing to commit adultery by being together because their marriage didn't start rightly? And then the second to that is should they get a second divorce? So they divorce each other. Is God asking them to divorce their spouse? So what's the counsel you'd give to that, Karen?
Wow. I think from the beginning, God addressed any type of sin with a question. He wants us to be introspective. What's going on? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And we do not control grace. So I'm grateful that God's grace covered sin.
Oh, that's good.
So we have to believe that there is restoration for all situations. But what we don't want to do is continue to repeat the same things over and over and over again when sin has so much relational consequences.
Yeah.
We want to stop, take responsibility for what's going on, and then seek the help that we need.
That's really good. I think one of the things you do is you start off with this, first of all, is recognizing where things went wrong and what mistakes you made. Repent of those things. Admit them. Just tell the Lord, this is where we messed up. Does that mean even in that process you might need to reach out to the people that you hurt? Maybe, send an apology, write a letter. It's not important that they receive the apology. It's not important that they even reciprocate, but it's just important that you did what you need to do to reconcile. It's good for you. And then the second thing is that you make a commitment that what God has said, you're going to be committed to from this point forward. And you ask for God's forgiveness. And you ask for God's strength. God, we want to be the people you want us to be. None of us started off right.
We're all born into sin.
Yeah. We already all of us started broken. That's not a license to say, well, I can do anything that I want to because ultimately God's going to forgive me. It's not that. But what it is this. It's this understanding that God redeems and restores.
That's good.
And and again, I go back to David and Bathsheba. Their relationship started in sin. It was a mess. Yet, and there was consequences of that. There's cost. There's fees. There's a better way to live. But in the end, God blesses that relationship. Solomon is born out of it, one of the great kings of Israel. And so don't get a second divorce. That's not a good idea.
No.
Put it in God's hands. Let him redeem it. Let him, make it holy as he can. And then you go from there. Absolutely. All right. So here's another one. Another good question. So we're talking about divorce. What does the Bible say about marriage in heaven? So are we going to be married in heaven? Kendall, what do you got on that?
Are we going to be married in heaven? Specifically speaking, Jesus says no. And I typically do my best as a pastor not to disagree with that guy. So
he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I would have to be in agreement that we're not married.
Absolutely.
But I will say this, though, and I think this is an interesting point, is that when Jesus says that, there's context and there's pieces to it. But at the same time, I think the main thing is this, is that, man, at the end of the day, what Jesus is really saying is that everything in our world, there will be semblances of earth and heaven, but in heaven, our focus will be completely different because we've never seen a life void of sin. We've never seen a life void of brokenness. We've never seen a life void of need. For instance, there's things that your spouse needs from you in marriage that they won't need from you in heaven because they're getting it from God. So there's there's times where my wife, when she encourages me, I need that from her. Like as a pastor, there's times where, you come out of work, you come out of off stage and the world has taken some chunks out of me, man. I've gotten bit and I'm like, dude, I feel beat up. And my wife can say one thing. It's like, I feel better. I'm like, oh man, I needed that from her. From her. No one else could really do it, from her. But I'll be getting that from God at that point directly. You know, when we get to heaven, there will be no need for those things. And so, and not to say that those things won't exist or whatever. And I don't think that's even what Jesus is saying. I think what Jesus is saying is that you can't fathom what life in heaven will be like, because it will be so different than what you've experienced here on earth. So I don't know that his statement necessarily is applying directly to the institution of marriage in heaven, but more so to the understanding of what life will be like outside of earth. I think that's more what he's saying.
I think that's really good. You know, there's that verse of scripture too that I think about, because marriage is, and we talked about last week, marriage is an image. It's a picture of God.
Yes.
So it's a picture of God. In the husband and wife, you have this picture of God. In fact, the Bible in Genesis 1:27 tells us that you know, you have God's image in him and her, and as the two come together in marriage, you have this unified picture. I've got a verse of scripture that I want to share with you that I also think is really, really good. Let's see, pull it up. 1 John 3:2. And here's what it says. Listen to this verse, because I think this goes along that line. It says, "Dear friends, we are already God's children, but he has not yet shown us what we will be like when Christ appears. But we do know that we will be like him, for we will see him as he really is."
That's good.
And so one of the things that happens in heaven, and I think it's an important part of our understanding, is that why marriage isn't the same in heaven as it is here is because marriage here on earth is the resident image of God.
Yeah, that's good.
So we're image bearers of God. In heaven, God's image will not need to be borne by anyone, because his image will be present.
So
and the Bible says we'll be transformed into his image. And so what we have is this, you know, right now, marriage has to be fought for. This relationship has to be fought because the image of God is always under attack.
Yeah.
You know, because the last thing the enemy of this world wants is the image of God to be clearly seen. And so he's constantly fighting it. And that's battles on the gender level. That's battles on the relationship level. That's the battles on the marriage level. You see these wars taking place because the image of God is under attack here. In heaven, that image of God will no longer be under attack. It'll be fully seen, fully clear. Paul said we look through a dimly lit mirror now. We don't see God fully, completely. When we're in heaven, we will. And so marriage, one of its greatest contributions, we tend to think about procreation being marriage's greatest contribution. Marriage's greatest contribution is the image of God.
That's right.
It bears the image of God.
That's right.
And so bears witness to the gospel. That's exactly right. In heaven, the gospel doesn't have to be preached, because all of those who are there will be redeemed. It'll be celebrated.
Yeah.
It will be reminisced on, but it doesn't have to be preached, because redemption has already come full swing.
That's right.
And so in heaven, that marital relationship won't look the same. It's not going to be like that. So I think the other part that's important is that we don't find anywhere where anybody is disappointed in what they got in heaven.
No.
You know, nobody's looking for their
not.
money back, you know?
No, that's great.
So I think, you know, because I know for me, and maybe a lot of people go, well, does that mean my spouse won't be my spouse? It'll be better than that.
Yeah.
Because right now, my spouse is my spouse, and there's sin still involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a broken, sinful nature.
Yeah.
It's affected every level of my understanding and my emotions and my feelings and my decisions and everything else. I won't have that there.
Right.
So what I will have in my spouse will be even greater, and what I'll have in every other relationship that I have will be great too.
I was going to say, because I was like, you know, we talk about sin affecting our relationship to God. And we're like, well, it affects my relationship to God. And I think it absolutely does. I think it does affect your relationship to God, but it also affects all your other relationships.
100%.
And not just sin against the person. You know, for instance, like we talked about adultery in the last podcast, you know, adultery would be sin against the other person, which you would expect that would affect that relationship. But sin being existent in your life in general, even if it doesn't affect the other person, affects your relationship with them, whether you like it or not. You can't have the depth, the fullness, the incredible pieces of those relationships and things like that, because sin ultimately, like scripture says, separates. It separates. And it not only separates us from God, but it separates us from our ability to have deeper relationships with other people. I absolutely believe that's true.
So good.
It's good. It's very good. You know, let me ask you this. So we kind of covered, you know, how divorce affects, you know, the husband and the wife, and what happens with that. We talked about that in the last podcast. We also talked about how that come to some of the first steps. So when you find yourself, your marriage is slipping, some things are going on, what are some things that you should do? And if you hadn't seen that, again, I'm going to go back. You need to watch that last one. We'll put a link in the description for this video for you to go back and watch it, because I felt like we hit some of the most practical stuff. She brought the big guns. It's good stuff.
Machine gun.
So now let's talk about kids a little bit, and let's just sort of, work around the room a little bit. What should a parent do to help their kids process the impact of divorce? What should they do, Karen? Because I know kids are crazily affected by this. And I know there's some parents going, man, I just don't want to ruin my kids' lives. And let's just say they're in a divorce that, they have no control of fixing. By the way, if our first emphasis is if you have any influence, any effect, any control, your first move needs to be trying to reconcile your marriage.
Absolutely.
It's the best thing you can do, especially for your kids. But let's say you don't. It's not something you control. What are some of the things that you could do to help your kids process through this and minimize the impact of it?
I definitely think taking responsibility for your behavior in front of your children. They pick up on way more than you realize.
That's good.
Kids need stability. They're very resilient. Kids bounce back. It's pretty amazing how resilient they are.
Right.
But at the beginning, when everything changes, they really need the support of their unified parents. So even though you've decided, okay, we can no longer be married and we're going to divorce, it's not the end. You still have to build some type of relationship with one another to where you can be friends on some level and set a good example for your children, because you're still modeling Christ in front of your children.
Yeah.
So the way you treat one another is so important. And kids need stability. They need a routine. The things that are important to them, let them keep it. Just work together. Learn to work together for the the benefit of your children.
Yeah. And I know, especially from a counseling perspective, having somebody that can sit down with those kids and maybe help them unpack. It's not, one of the problems you have when you are in the divorce is that, your kids feel the pressure that it puts on you and the hurt that it puts on you, but they've got things they need to talk about. But they feel like that if I talk to mom about it, it's going to hurt because mom cries.
Yeah, they get put in the middle.
So, I think counseling is one of those things where you put them in an environment where they have a chance to talk to somebody that their conversation doesn't hurt the other person.
Yes, definitely. And also the parents sitting down with someone they can talk to, with a counselor or someone, because you don't want to say anything in front of your children that will harm them.
Yeah.
So everybody having a safe place to talk those things through is so important. It really helps the family unit be able to move forward and create that new normal.
That's good. Yeah. Even deferring to God, we're gonna pray for mom.
Absolutely,
we're gonna pray for mom. We're gonna, this is not how it's supposed to look. This is not how it should be. But we're gonna be praying for daddy.
Definitely.
We're gonna be, God's got this and He's got us. And having your kids in the middle of a bad circumstance like this, but also exposing them to the greater, will of a God who's sovereign, is really a big deal, because you have to understand that we are image bearers of God. To our kids, we're the first exposure that they get to what the Godhead looks like. Dad, mom, the picture of justice and the picture of mercy, the picture of holiness and the picture of grace is all. And so when that gets broken up for a kid, that's very turbulent.
Yes.
And so having them understand that this was a picture that's being held by broken hands. Yet there's a God in eternity. He's still in control, and he's going to work with us, and us deferring to that. And that may mean, taking the higher ground every opportunity you get. Absolutely. Rather than when the negative, mean, bitter statement is thrown at you, or someone says something or whatever, you don't volley it back. No. Instead, you say, we're going to put that in God's hands and we're going to trust Him with that. And your kids start seeing a pattern of, I can trust God in hurtful times like this, where things are not going the way that I want them to go. And so
you definitely teach your children how to respond to stress.
Yes.
When you're going through a really difficult season. So it's important to be mindful. We don't have to be perfect. You can lose it one day and then come back and say, okay, I lost it yesterday, but I should have reacted this way, A, B, and C.
That's right.
Teach them through it, but don't forget them or leave them behind, because they're living through this divorce just like you are.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, and I think, when I've walked through it and seen it, happen. And I've had people ask me like, what do I do? And you paint all the different scenarios, and there's a million, and everybody's scenario is a little bit different or whatever. Sure. But there are times where it's completely out of your control. The they're leaving and you've done everything you can. You're begging them to go to counseling. You're begging them to get, and I've seen it, man. I've seen it on both sides, men and women, begging them to go to counseling, begging them to come to church, begging them to do anything with them, begging them to stay. And they just won't. They're just out. Now I will say this, when you have children, you are no longer the priority. Yep. And that's the part. It's hard for a lot of people to stomach. Like, well, I don't like this. Well, I don't care. You have kids and you've got to get over it. And you're no longer the center of attention. It's no longer about you. It's not about what you like or having a marriage that benefits you. It has to shift, and your kids become the priority. It's what's best for them. It's what's best. Now, again, going back, a situation where there's abuse, emotional or physical, that's a different scenario at that point. But when you're married with kids and you're about to have a divorce, you got to get yourself out of it. You're like, well, I don't like what this person does. Well, it doesn't matter. You're going to have to find a way to make it work. Fake it till you feel it, whatever you got to do. And it may not be enjoyable for you for a long time. There may be years where you don't like it, but your kids, this is the best opportunity for them to get through this. And I think that's the first thing is shifting those priorities. Understand the kids have got to come first. And I would say this is get off Facebook. Don't share your relationship with other people. Yeah. Stop That's talking good. To other people. Talk to a counselor if you need to talk to somebody, but don't go around looking for validation from other people in your relationship and in your divorce. So if you're getting a divorce and you're like, well, he's leaving me and I've done everything I can, you're going to spill all that junk on Facebook. You're ruining your kids' lives. Yeah. You're ruining them. You're ruining it. You're ruining it. You will ruin their lives literally. And so stop, get off that stuff. Stop talking to other people. If you're doing the right thing, then you shouldn't need validation. You just do the right thing and move on. And I think that's where for us, your kids are the priority. Again, you don't need to be validated. Your kids need to be the priority in every decision that you make. And if you do that, if you show them as the priority, obviously honoring God first, but showing your kids that they're the priority, then ultimately they will be able to walk through this and go, hey, okay, I was prioritized. My mom cared about or my dad cared about what I thought. They cared about they asked me questions. They asked me if I was okay. They walked through this with me. I think that's a big deal to your kids and things like that. And I know we kind of shifted away from, the individual relationship. If you're married without kids, I believe that's a completely different divorce.
Yeah, definitely.
I know it's sad to say, but the truth is that when you're married with kids, it's just a different ball game, man. The kids are involved now, and that's their mom or that's their dad. And no matter how much that they're a terrible person or that they didn't do what they were supposed to do, that's still their mom or dad.
That's right.
And if you're getting a divorce because you want less work, you're making a mistake, because divorce is more work.
I think a lot of what I hear is, I just want this over. Right. I just want this to end. And one of the things that I will say is it's not ever over.
It's not.
That's the dad or the mom to your kids. Yeah. You're going to have to learn some way to have a relationship with them. And sometimes it's really, really broken. I get that. Usually the first couple of years, research-wise, it's very, very hard for the family. But then everyone begins to acclimate. But they do that because everyone decides, hey, we're going to do what's best for the kids. And we're going to do what's best in God's eyes.
You bet. Yeah. You bet. Well, and I think it's so important that if you don't put your kids in the middle where they're the battle, sword, if they're the whatever, and I think the other part is turning their heart away from their mom or dad. You may have been hurt by them. And that's absolutely true. And I don't think anybody wants to minimize that. No. And that hurt may be there, and they may be continuing to injure you, and that happens too. There's people that they just get this mean bitterness and they just do some mean, bitter stuff. But the best thing you can do for your kids is show them how you can take someone treating you harshly and horribly, and you can put that in the hands of God, because your security, your future, your emotional horsepower and everything is based on Christ redeeming and working in your life. Jesus is our example. He's betrayed, he's turned over, he's being crucified, and all the while at every corner does not harbor the bitterness, does not receive that. He turns it over, turns it over. And by doing that, yes, vengeance, we want it, But the issue with revenge revenge isn't a discipline issue. Revenge is an issue. Can I trust God?
Oh, absolutely.
Can I trust God?
Him to be the righteous?
Yeah, let him be the one to figure this out, because God's going to be the one that's going to handle this, and so I'm going to put it in his hands. And as much as a divorce is horrible and God hates it and it's devastating, during that dark time, you can still teach your kids some incredible stuff. Absolutely. You can show them, hey, you know what? God's still in control. Definitely. I'm going to trust him. We're not going to take this in our own hands. We're going to leave that up to the Lord, and we're not going to return, bitterness for bitterness, hate for hate, anger for anger. We're just not going to do that. And don't put them in the middle of that. Don't let the kids be the middle of that. And at the same time, talk positively. Yeah. Speak Definitely. Positive things into their lives, and speak positive into the kids' lives.
Even when your other counterpart doesn't. It's like even when they don't.
Especially when they don't.
And I think that's the thing is that, and like we said, even in the first podcast, we're talking about, ministering to your spouse. I think there's a way to minister to your spouse through divorce. It's like when the best way to just rip the fuse right out of a stick of dynamite is to just be kind. And when they're just fuming, and you're just kind, and you're kind to them, and you care about them, even when they honestly know that they've acted in such a way that they shouldn't be cared about anymore.
And I'll caveat that I want to add to that real quick, and it's just from an experience I've had with a couple of different folks that I've counseled with that were going through something like this. Kindness does not mean that you are not positioning yourself to have as much control as you possibly can over the lives of the kids.
Correct.
That you're, that doesn't mean that you're rolling over and you're saying, hey, do anything you want to me from now on. No. You're not putting your head back on the chopping block and saying, hey, I want you to just go ahead and cut my head off because I'm just trying to be an altruist right here.
You can be kind and firm.
Well, you have good boundaries. You can have healthy boundaries.
You do.
Right.
You do.
Yeah, it's very important.
Well, and I'll give you an example. There was a good friend of mine, his wife just lost her mind. And in that process, she found a boyfriend. She's running off this guy, or trying to. He was underage, so it's a long story. And he was sitting in my office. He said, man, I don't know what to do. I said, right now, your number one priority needs to be to get full control of your kids. You need to make sure that you're not dealing the craziness that you're seeing right now. You need to work on the custody side of your children right now while this craziness is distracted. And if this thing turns around, then you're still in control of it and you can release that as you want to. But right now, your clarity needs to be looking at the future and saying, hey, I need to make sure my kids are in the best place. And you are the one who probably would best be the one to navigate that and control that. So while we got this turbulence going on and this distractions here and this craziness is happening, you get the kids. Don't respond to that other stuff. Make sure you got control of the kids. And then if later on you relinquish, that things turn the corner and, it's not that you don't want them to have their mother or involvement with their mother, but you being in control of how that relationship can look makes a big difference later when if things don't go well.
So. I think it's always the best interest of the child. It's best if both mom and 100%. Dad are in the picture somehow 100%. Because that's what's stable to the kids. I know there's situations where there's abuse and things like that, but I'm talking a normal, all divorce is not normal.
Sure, true.
But, the divorce where parents decide we can't be married anymore for various reasons. You still want to create that environment where the kids feel safe.
Absolutely.
So they're not to be thrown from parent to parent. They're not a bargaining chip. They're your children, and you want them to grow in their relationship with God and the other spouse, along the way.
That's right.
Healthy boundaries, lots of prayer.
Yep.
And get help. Sit down and talk through some things with a counselor.
It's really good. It's really good. So let's move on. Let's move past that a little bit. And so divorce has happened. I'm divorced. We're past that. We're still, there's always going to be that lifelong handling and managing of that. But when do I know when it's right? And what does it look like for me to move forward with another relationship? Dating after divorce, relationship after divorce. Where do I go?
I think you kind of need to put a timeline on it too, because like people they're like, oh, okay, when I'm ready. Well, I'm ready a month later. You're like, okay, well, when are you really ready?
What's the number you give, Karen, when someone says, man, when do you think I'm ready? Which, I mean, we know that there's sociological, not sociological, Psychological. I don't know what just happened just then. Psychological issues, and there's other issues that go along with that. But generally to give somebody, because I think it's good to give them a kind of a, hey, you need to think about this is about what we're talking about timeline.
Yeah, absolutely. My advice is always at least a year.
Yeah.
2 is great.
Yep.
Because most of the time people need to learn how to be in a relationship with God for themselves.
Sure.
shore up your identity. Make sure that you understand what a relationship with God looks like before you jump into a relationship with man.
Yeah.
You want to have the things that are broken healed. You want to be going in the right direction before you start dating.
Sure.
Because typically what happens, and research backs this up, is if you're divorced once and you jump into another relationship, typically you're still attracted to the same brokenness.
That's good.
Again and again. So you want to make sure that you understand what happened. And of course, there are situations that are beyond your control.
Sure.
So we're not generalizing and saying every situation is like this.
Correct.
But at least walk through the steps.
It's good.
Find out what happened, why you were attracted to this type of person. And if there were red flags, why did I continue to move forward? What's broken in my identity to where I couldn't set a few standards and say, if this is going on, I'm not going to be in this relationship.
That's good.
So learn from it. Take the time to learn from it. At least a year. 2 is even better.
It's good. It's good. Yeah, because, you do see a lot of people that go from one broken relationship to another, to another, to another. And if you don't interrupt whatever it is in that cycle,
pattern,
if we don't interrupt that and go, okay, evidently my picker's broke, so I need somebody to adjust my picker because my picker's not picking well. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you need that. It's a big deal. Rebound relationships just don't tend to do well.
You can rack them up, racking up them rebounds, man. All of a sudden it's 2 and it's 3 and it's 5 and it's 7. It's like, whoa, it goes quick.
Well, and if you look at it like this too, I think that you have to think about that if I go forward and I'm not changing what I'm doing, then the second relationship layer adds a whole nother layer of destruction, devastation, especially if you have kids. Yeah. So now your kids have a whole nother layer of scarring and everything else, So
give us your timeline, Dad. What's your timeline after marriage?
I used to tell people all the time, 1.5 years, 2 years is what you need to really, that's realistic. I guarantee there's somebody that's going to, but we didn't wait that long and we did great. Yeah, okay, that's true.
There's always exceptions.
And there's somebody that drove 150 mile an hour on the interstate, didn't die. Yes, all those things are true. You drove through a hailstorm in an airplane and the plane didn't go down or whatever. Yes, those things, they're not, it's like winning the lottery. Yeah. It's just not the norm.
Common.
Yeah. And so what you want to look at is what's the norm. 2 things have to happen during that time before you start dating, in my opinion. One is that you need to heal from the hurt from the relationship that you were in.
That's good.
And then secondly, you need to come accustomed to, which may have been a root problem in the very beginning, to what is singleness and my relationship to God and singleness look like. Because sometimes the divorce and the marriage that was broken was just a symptom of a deeper problem.
Definitely.
Where you were trying to cover something with a relationship, or maybe I had a conversation with one lady one time. We were sitting there and talking, and she had been through a divorce, and was in another relationship. I mean, within weeks after the divorce was over with, and we were talking. I said, give me the longest period of time your adult life that you've been without a man, where it was just you and God. She said, longest period of time. I was like, yeah, longest. She's like, I don't know, maybe a month. Her whole life since she was 13.
Yeah.
I said, so I want you to think about it. Since you were 13, and you definitely don't have your identity at 13. You know what I'm saying? You should be riding a bicycle playing with Barbies. You know what I'm saying? Be a kid
Not
for
dating.
a second. Yeah, no. Right. Any time of day.
Right.
Listen, something's broke.
Mature enough,
Yeah. So all that time, you haven't even figured out who you are. I said, it's no accident that you keep going from one relationship to another. You're the serial relation person, so you got to figure out who you are. And so when divorce has come into your life, discovering singleness and who am I before the Lord as an individual single person, and not trying to replace what you felt like we were missing this, because he's not there anymore. So I don't have any, how am I going to get somebody to mow the grass? Who's going to take care of this? Or for him, who's going to be there to help me do whatever? Those things are nominal tasks that you may have to learn yourself. What's the bigger
Hire a lawn service, for gosh sakes. Don't get a boyfriend.
The bigger perspective, and this takes time. The bigger perspective is, who am I?
Well, we have to understand that our culture around us is always sending messages to women.
Oh, for sure.
Saying, you need a man. Your greatest step you'll ever take is to get married and all these things. But from a biblical perspective, our first relationship when we come outside, well, actually, our parents should guide us towards it, is Jesus, and a relationship with Jesus.
That's
and have a firm identity in Him.
Yep.
And then if we choose to marry, great. Then both should have their own individual relationship with Jesus. And then together, together, you're on mission, which is amazing. But when we get those things out of line and we seek validation from, another human being to meet our basic needs, that's never going to happen.
Yep.
Because those are created to be met by God, our relationship with God.
You mean to tell me that there's an option in life where you could actually be single?
Yes, there is. Isn't that amazing?
What? Are you kidding me?
And not be single and not ready to mingle. Like ready. Like
it's not a punishment. It's a choice.
Like I tell people when we're talking about it, I'm like, we've always said like, a year or two, and typically there's some qualifiers in that. I'm like, how long do you need to be single after? How long was the relationship? If you're married to somebody for 15 years, you may want to take a longer time. It may take you longer to peel back the layers of the depth of that relation. Where if you were married for 9 months, it may not take as long to get to the bottom of kind of what was going on. At the same time, that still means a year at least. I would say 12 months. I always tell people 12 months dedicated to God, 12 months dedicated to Him. That means no dating. No, nothing. Dedicated to God directly. You're not searching for Mr. Right. You're not looking. You're like, well, what if he walks into my life? You shouldn't see him because you're not looking. And so it's like you wouldn't even know. You won't even know you missed him because you're not looking for it.
Yeah.
Well, in part of understanding that who it is that we're supposed to be with, that we have a sovereign God who's in control of that. So you don't have to panic. Are we going to run out of of decent people or beautiful people before? No, God's in control of that. So I'm going to trust Him and here's the beauty of it. When we're actively pursuing God and we become the person, number one, we need to become the person that we want to meet.
Absolutely.
We want to have the character that person is that we desire. If you want, be faithful. Be filled with the Spirit, be loving people, be serving the Lord, be active in your mission and ministry. You become the person that you ultimately want to meet. Definitely. And then when God, the other thing that God does is when we're faithful, He's faithful, and He's faithful even when we're not. Yeah. But let's be faithful and let's trust that God can bring that person into your life. He's got that, and He'll know stuff. You may only see the wavy blonde hair. But God goes, no, you don't understand.
There are red
the freaks
flags.
come out at night.
Attention.
You know what I mean?
Pay attention to red flags.
100%.
If the Holy Spirit gives you a little tug, don't override it by, but I really want to get married.
Oh, yeah.
Or, I really need someone. Yeah. God is always leading and guiding us. A lot of times we override the wisdom of God by our human desires, what we want and what we need, especially coming out of a long-term relationship.
Absolutely. And if someone that you're dating, if you have re-entered dating, if someone you're dating doesn't understand that and you've been through a divorce, just know it's not going to work out. That's like if they're like, we just need to get to the next step. Listen, it's not going to work out. Just go ahead and end it, save yourself the divorce money and move on. Like it's not worth it.
Truth. So the second thing that I want to point out is that when we're talking about a person that feels like they're ready to start dating, or it's after divorce and they want to think about what does that timeline look like and what do I need to do for dating? One of the things that I tell them is that you're not really ready to date until you're willing to be single.
It's good.
Because if I'm at all costs trying to find somebody, I think dating out of desperation is a horrible thing anyway, period.
Yes.
When you're desperate dating, you're putting so much power. I see this with young ladies and young men today, and when I'm talking about students, Brady, you can even talk to this. Students have such a level of desperation because I feel like as parents, we have done such a terrible job with their identity. So the little girl and the little boy is going into the world with such a need from somebody else. They're putting so much power in somebody else's untrustworthy hands to control their life,
Sad thing is they're probably dating the same way their parents do now.
Probably.
Yes. They're just modeling what you do. So when your house is a revolving door for men, their house will be a revolving door for other people. It's unfortunate.
True. So you need to set some standards is another thing. When I go to the grocery store, I have a list. Mm-hmm. That's just the grocery store. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we're just talking about, cantaloupe and, bread. Yeah. You know what I mean? We're not even talking about our spouse. But when we begin to look for a person to date, we have no standard. What's your standard?
Yeah.
What is your I'm not going to settle for? Because you're going to get the spouse you settle for.
Absolutely.
What will I not settle for? And I would make a long list,
Definitely.
And but I would start off with a few things. I'm going to give you a few things that I'm thinking. That they have to own their own relationship with Jesus.
That's right.
Yes. Number one.
Yeah.
That's great.
Dating's not evangelism.
No missionary dating.
That's right.
Ladies, no missionary dating.
That's right.
He's not a project.
That's exactly right. If he is, you don't need to date
If
him.
he is,
If he's a project, he shouldn't be a prospect.
That's
All
right.
Throw him
That's
out.
right. Yeah.
Get him into counseling.
That was kind of good there.
let him take
Some bars over
responsibility
here,
for
baby.
his own relationship.
That's right.
With God, and women as well. Take your
That's right.
responsibility
That's
for
right.
your own
That's right.
relationship with God, and don't project that onto another person. We're not God.
What do you say to a girl when she says, "Yeah, but he goes to church"?
Yeah. I say, without you texting him, who texts first? That's usually what I say. Who texts first? I want you to stop texting today and see who initiates.
I wonder how many. I was just thinking back with our church, how many people that have started going to church here, dating somebody, and when the dating stopped, they left.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
All the time.
I
Or they'll go to a different service. Like,
I
no, man, the 8:30's mine.
Yeah, I also suggest to women, don't reveal your heart.
No, yeah.
You know, if you're dating someone and you reveal your heart, that as well. You reveal your heart, and all of a sudden he's transformed into exactly what you wanted.
That's true.
You know, that's problematic.
Yeah,
you want people to have their own identity.
That's a good.
Yeah, the last thing you want is a chameleon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because a chameleon only transforms to what it thinks is important.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And later, when you're married,
Yes.
you may not be the most important thing. So
Which
guess
I
what?
see that too. They come back around after
yeah.
they're married, and it's the problem. You know, he's no longer does what he did before, and so make sure that he has his own relationship with God. It's so important, and you have your own relationship
That's good.
with God.
100%.
That's good.
100%. So, a relationship with Christ. I think the second thing is that I believe that if you're going to date somebody, they need to have an understanding of what their mission is. What is it that why are they on this planet for on mission? You know, and I know someone's going to go, wait a second, my gosh, man, we got to,
Dude, I can't tell you how many people, though, no joke, and we have an incredible couple. I'm not going to throw their name out there because I'm going to be nice, but I'll say this. I'm complimenting them, so it's like it's a compliment, but you're still not getting the credit. But I'll say this, is that, man, we have an incredible couple at that church cabin who literally found each other through serving at that church cabin. I mean, literally, they came into the church, they're both single, at the time. In fact, one of them was walking through a divorce and then came in and was single. And so they're both single. They both took an extended period of time off from dating and things that didn't even know about each other. And then all of a sudden they bump into each other literally through their serve team. On their serve team, awesome. They bump into each other, learn about each other, hear about each other's stories, start praying for each other, all that stuff. And all of a sudden they start dating, and now they're married and they have a beautiful family. It's absolutely incredible. And that all happened because they understood their mission. And mission doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be like, he wants to minister to this, this little tribe over in Africa or whatever. It's like all these things. No, listen, all it has to be is maybe he's fired up about the 2-year-old classroom at church, and the dude wants to teach those little kids about, Jesus. He's telling them about, Bartholomew or whatever. And that is mission, like at its, or they're fired up about being a front door greeter at the church or whatever. That's all mission has to be, but they need to be on mission. They need to be doing it.
So go ahead. Did you have something you were going to throw in there?
No, I was just going to say my husband and I connect through counseling. So.
Hey,
it's good.
Everybody's story is different.
I wonder what it's like. I wonder what it's like when you two go to argue, though.
Well, we don't argue. When you know as many techniques as we do, it just becomes a joke, because there is no.
Two professional counselors trying
we don't argue, and I'm honest about that. It's ridiculous.
That's good. That's good.
Both of you know it'd be a mute point.
Well, and when you counsel other couples and you're telling them these techniques, and we always just laugh because we'll say, I guess we need to practice that too.
That's good. That's good.
Keeps it real.
It's really good.
There it is.
So they need to own their own relationship with Christ, and they need to be on some type of mission for Christ. Now, I've got a list of other things, and I've run people through this before, because I tell them, I said, these are what's important to you, because there are some things that aren't necessarily necessarily have a biblical perspective that's going to be important to you. You need to think about what you want to settle for. We've seen this when people are pursuing a divorce. A lot of times the divorce didn't come because of a spiritual reason. A lot of times the divorce came from something else. It came from how they didn't control the money spending. The divorce, and the problems came in, when a person didn't like accountability. How do they handle accountability? These are when you're dating, you're kicking the tires.
Yeah.
So if I got in a car and I'm like, I'm fixing to buy this car, I'm not sure if I want it or not. It's the perfect paint job. Oh my God, look at the wheels. Do you see the wheels on this thing?
Yeah.
It's awesome. And you get excited about it. You jump in it and you drive it, but it's going, you're like, I don't know that I like that.
That'll stop once I buy it, right?
Yeah. So
once I purchase it, that'll stop doing that rattle.
But I think the point is that you need to think about what is it that is going to be important in the relationship that just dissolved. Good. Don't make everything about be an antithesis to what happened to this last relationship either.
That's good.
Because what happens is we'll take a broken relationship we had and then we project that in every other relationship.
Yeah. I don't date guys that drive red vehicles anymore.
Well, and more so they'll be like you'll be looking for like these issues that you saw in the first hint of it. You go, you're doing the same thing to me that so and so used to do.
Yeah.
Well, and all of a sudden now your spouse has to begin, or your date has to begin to sort of tiptoe around and walk on eggshells in different areas of your life. Yeah. That says your identity and your healing wasn't finished. So you didn't go a year and a half, 2 years. You know what you did? You went like
like a month and a half, 2 months.
Yeah. So, but what are things that are important to you? Even bad habits.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Do they smoke, gamble, drink?
Yeah, simple things. Simple. I mean, I know for me, like, I wanted to marry someone who had a college degree. I don't know why. Because I don't have one, I guess. So it's like, and Nicole, I met her. I was like, dang, she's got like a master's degree and stuff. She's smart. And so, but that's what I wanted. So that's the deal.
It's good. So having a list of what you won't settle for will help you not settle for something.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's good.
Definitely.
And then you got to kind of stick to it, because I think the list, as time goes on, sometimes what happens is our list begins to erode. We're like, we start off with, we want somebody that has a relationship with Jesus, that is on mission, they have a good job, teeth, whatever. And then later you're like, okay, they got teeth, that's good enough. So you don't want to do that. You want to stick to it, and you just need to understand a bad marriage. Singleness is way better than a bad marriage, no matter what.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even tough singleness.
Absolutely.
Tough singleness is better than a bad marriage.
Yeah.
So, one other thing that I want to say too is that with your kids, if you're dating, you can't just date for what you want. Now you're not only looking for a partner prospect as a husband or wife, but you're looking as a parent prospect. How are they going to receive, accept? Discipline. How do we divide? Let's talk about this. How do as a blended family, how are we going to discipline the kids and whatever? But I have this personal thing, and Karen, I'm gonna run it at you and just see what you think. I've always told couples that you do not even begin to introduce your date to your kids until you are like 90% sure this is somebody you're going to marry. That means you may have dated them for a really long time. They've never met each other. But phase one is they should get through your screening process first before you ever put them on the kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I definitely think that. Yeah. One of the reasons is I have counseled adults who their parents divorced when they were kids, but didn't remarry until the kids were adults, and they have difficult time processing it. Now, these are adults. Yeah. So when their parent decides to get married, it's very hurtful to them. So imagine that as a child, having to process through all of those emotions, and introducing that too soon can cause abandonment issues, trust issues. It really shapes their ability to process relationships for a lifetime. Yeah.
Well, and introducing them too early has no benefit. No. It's not going to benefit the relationship at all. In fact, the only thing it does is introduce complications to when you're dating someone. You need to be able to, at any point, pull the plug. And sex before marriage and while you're dating, it doesn't have any benefit either, other than it feels good for a few minutes. After that, all it does is introduce more problems to where you can't pull the plug because your judgment's clouded. Same thing when you introduce them to your kids. Now I can't pull the plug easy because what am I going to tell little Timmy that, now he's not coming around anymore, or she's not coming around anymore. You guys were friends. They played Yahtzee in the floor. They know who they are, whatever else, but they're not going to be, they're not going to be here anymore. And that part gets complicated because now it's like, well, I can't pull the plug now. That's why you don't introduce them. I mean, literally, I said 90% earlier, but when I say 90%, you should be like sure that this is the person, this is the person that you're going to marry. Honestly, there's been times where I've said, and I've told people this, you better be talking engagement, and seriously talking engagement before you introduce your kids to them. Because man, at the end of the day, introduce them early doesn't help you anyway. And until that person's really committed, why expose your kids to something that could really hurt them? I think before knowing they're committed.
But I really think if you go back to those earlier things we talked about, their relationship to Christ and their relationship to the Lord and them on mission, those elements make these other things easier to process through. Because their heart, where their heart is, where their integrity is, where the Spirit of God is at work in them, all of that, goes a long way in being able to help you understand what they'll be like in that environment. Now, I still think there's some questions that will be unanswered. You can't answer every single question. But I know this, I know that as you pray about it, God gives you discernment, and that's the beauty of being in an intimate relationship with God first.
Absolutely.
Is He will give you those red flags. If you want to ignore it, God will go, hey, bad idea. He just will. But you have to listen for that still small voice.
You can't be clouding your judgment with all this other stuff. You got to get all that out of the way where it can be clear.
That's exactly right. So, but giving that time before the kids see them. And then premarital counseling. How important is that?
It's very important. To piggyback off what you just said, I would like to remind the couples out there that when you are divorced, you're still in some type of relationship.
That's right.
So divorce is not final as in, I'm never going to talk to you again if you have children.
That's right.
It can't be.
It can't be. It can't be. So anytime you start to introduce someone else into that family unit, because it's still a family unit, you're just no longer living together. It takes some time. And if the person you're wanting to introduce into the family gets offended by waiting, that's a huge red flag.
That's right.
Because that's about them, not about the health of the family. So let that be an indicator. If you're trying to introduce someone into that family unit, you've decided, hey, I've dated, I've done it right. I'm going to get married now, so I'm going to introduce them to my kids. And you start to have problems. Red flags here.
That's right.
Red flags. Don't be afraid. And as Kendall said, don't take it so far that you feel like you can't end it.
That's right.
So always make sure that you guard enough to where you can have those conversations. And if you need to, end that relationship for the health of your family.
Yeah, and that physical intimacy, one of the things that sex does is sex bonds, it's an adhesive that's supposed to bond two people together for a lifetime. So if you enter into a sexual relationship, you enter into that early on, then what happens is you have this false sense of connectivity that's not there. It's not held up by the foundation of a covenant truth and promise. And so what happens is that, so you want to guard yourself from that. Throughout this process, you need to have the freedom and the opportunity to say, this ain't working out. And I got to do something else. It does, and as much as you go, well, I don't want to hurt anybody else's feelings, it's going to be better to hurt somebody else's feelings or have this be a rough season than to enter into a relationship that's doomed from the beginning. So you make up your mind on the front end, and if you'll keep these boundaries clearly communicated, I think that helps us a ton.
Definitely.
You look at them and say, hey, look, we're dating. I want to be clear. We're just dating. Well, why haven't you introduced me to your kids? Because it's not time for that yet. You hadn't gotten there yet. Okay. We're not sure that we want to do that yet, and if you keep it in that spot, and you let this process work itself out and let God give discernment where it's needed, then you have a much better chance, a better chance of a relationship being
for life, life. And I think that's the thing, is that your goal should not be to win in dating. Your goal is to win in life, for it to be a long term. And so there's short-term sacrifices that you can make that will end in long-term success. But there's also short-term shortcuts you can take that will kill your ability to have a long-term, long-lasting relationship that actually is successful. I think that's the hard part.
And premarital.
Put
in the hard work.
Counseling. Put it in.
Go to some premarital counseling. Work through all of those relational struggles. Because in a blended family, there's a lot more to it.
There are, and in counseling, the beauty of it is that there will be things brought up that you didn't even think about. In premarital counseling, when there's no kids involved, this is the first marriage. There's stuff brought up, and you go, "Hey, so what do you guys agree to spend without the other person's permission?" What?
I have to ask permission. This is my money. That's usually what I hear.
So all of a sudden, you're like, "But
anymore.
Do you realize the number? You realize the number of divorces that come out of couples that don't have clear boundaries and understanding when it comes to finances. And
Who's
so
taking out the trash?
that's right.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Amen. It's a big, huge deal. So anyway,
It's like that as teenagers.
so that's why you have children. So. Well, let me say this. I think our time's winding down. I feel like that we've really had an opportunity to kind of unpack some things. There's more to this, and I think we wouldn't mind at all, and Karen would be involved with this. If you want to drop some comments or questions, individual questions about some of the stuff we've talked about, we only have a limited amount of time to cover as much as we can, but maybe you got something unique, something that's going on in your life. Leave us a comment. Share it with us. Let us answer that. We don't mind hard questions. We don't mind that at all. We enjoy the opportunity to be able to invest in your life, and so divorce is a big deal, and it's a part of our community. It's a part of our society. But God takes marriage very seriously, and the implications are really big. So when you walk into something that could affect this many facets of your life, it's great to have a multitude of counselors and a multitude of voices speaking into it, and we would love to be some of those voices if we can. As always, share this with other people, let people know what's going on. Hit that bell so that you'll know when new content's coming out with what's going on. And we've got some stuff coming up. We're going to be interviewing some pretty cool people here shortly. I'm not going to tell you everything, but it's going to be good. So keep your eyes open to future podcasts. Every Tuesday live at 11 a.m. We go live on 2 platforms, Facebook and YouTube. You can join us there. The videos are also available on my YouTube channel at any time for your consumption on demand. And so there's that. So anyway, I appreciate you. Thank you for being here with us. We appreciate you taking the time out to hang out with us today. If we can help you in any way, let us know. Until we see you next time, God bless you.